Hello and welcome to The Stack. This week's show has a distinctive food meets print touch, where I speak with the River Cafe's Ruthie Rogers on her new book, Squeeze Me, Lemon Recipes and Art, which she made in partnership with artist Ed Ruscha. We also pay a visit to St. John's new location at the London Review Bookshop. And finally, we unveil the first edition in English of iconic Japanese title Popeye. Enjoy the show. From Midori House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show welcoming to the studio the legendary chef Ruthie Rogers from the incredible The River Cafe. She just published a new book titled Squeeze Me, Lemon Recipes and Art, a stunning celebration of lemons. The book was made in partnership with iconic artist Ed Ruscha. It's not your usual cooking book. Here is Ruthie with more.
It's Ed Ruscha, who is, as we know, the great living artist of today, and also myself doing the recipes with the River Cafe, and also Johnny Ive, who designed the Apple Watch and the iMac with Steve Jobs many years ago, and has a company now called Love From, and Heather Ive, who's a poet. So I was doing a lot of the words. So it was a real collaboration of friends and people who, you know, have the same values, the same ideas. And with Ed, I've been a fan of Ed long before I knew him. His work, as we all know, is just a great artist, as I said. I always said to him, you know, he loves books. Books are a large part of, especially his early work, of the ones he did of the gas stations. And so I said to him, Ed, please, let's do a book. And he went, Ruthie, one day we'll do one. And then we'd go back to his dry martini or whatever he was doing. And so I said, well, how about it? A couple of years ago, how about that book? And he said, let me finish the show at the Museum of Modern Art. He did a great retrospective there. And I said, okay. And then after that, it was, I have another this retrospective is traveling to Los Angeles. So let's talk then. So we did. And I was in LA and I went to the studio. And he said, okay, I'll do it on two conditions. One is that it's a small book, a short book. And the other one is it has one subject, food-wise. And so we went into behind his studio. He had lemon trees. And so he came on the idea of doing a book about lemons.
And I think lemons are the best.
They are the best.
I know in your restaurant you use a lot of lemons.
We use a lot.
It makes sense. But how interesting that he had lemon trees in his studio.
And in a very, it's not a garden. It's in Culver City. It's almost industrial in its aspect. He has cars in the garage. He has concrete on the floor, but then there's a small patch and it has lemon trees in them.
And of course, in the beautiful, there's about 47, 48 lemon recipes. But it's fascinating that there's not a picture of the dish itself, but beautiful photography by Ed as well. It's quite innovative. It's not your usual recipe book, right, Ruthie?
Well, what we want people to do is to, explore it through reading the recipes. Oh, I didn't know you could make a risotto with lemon. As you just said to me,
roast potatoes.
5 minutes, you could do roast potatoes with lemons. And it's a book that explains itself through joy, I think. It portrays itself through happiness and intrigue. And Ed's work, he did all the art and photography in his studio. And the captions that he always has, well, not always, but a lot of his work has words. He plays with words. And so he has his own typeface, and he put the type on the photographs. And Heather Ive did the words. Some of them were Ed's that he found, W.C. Fields or Pablo Neruda. And then she did the rest, which are funny and intriguing. And you turn the book around to read them.
It's cheeky sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a bit cheeky. That's a good word. And we almost did the recipes like captions because we wanted them to be able to have a lot of white around. We wanted the art to shine. And we also, if you do a book with so few recipes, there's no point in having chapters because you might only have 4 pastas and, 3 drinks and 1 soup. So we did it the way we sort of felt the rhythm of the book was. So you might have, a whiskey sour followed by a risotto, and a risotto followed by an ice cream. It's a book to look at in bed. It's a book to take into your kitchen. It's a book to leave, on your sofa. It's a great present. We've priced it very fairly so people could use it. And it's called Squeeze Me.
I love the title already.
That was Heather Ive, yeah.
And by the way, going back to lemons, I think they are so versatile and truly versatile because they can be sour, it can be sweet, it can be salty. I mean, there's so many different usages, right? I don't think there's many ingredients quite like that.
No, I'm already thinking about the next book, and we're thinking, well, what ingredient would be that you might do with that for, able to do this? And I think it also is very delightful because Ed really wanted the photographs at the end of a little girl just eating a lemon. And that's pretty radical to actually just put a lemon in your mouth. But there she is.
It's funny that, I grew up in Brazil, Ruthie. So for us, actually, because we're more of a lime country, but every time there were lemons in the supermarket, it was considered a little bit more upmarket. We called it the Sicilian lemon, So we had this kind of image of the lemon as there's quite an interesting connection there.
What did you make with them?
We used to make cakes, actually, a lot of desserts with it. Chicken as well. I think chicken with lemons. Do you have a favorite recipe from the book? Not a favorite, but one that perhaps come to your mind now, because all of them are your favorites.
They are. It's like having children.
Yes.
I think that I was explaining, but maybe we should do a different one, because I was explaining about the recipe that you add lemon to the milk and then it curdles the sauce, which is for pork, but you can do it with chicken. And it was something that my mother-in-law always used to do. She was a northern Italian. She would brown a chicken, say, and she would then put it in a saucepan and put with lemon peel and milk about halfway up and let it cook very, very slowly. And then what happens, it becomes curdled, but in a good way. You're always worried about milk curdling. And so I think that one is a special recipe because it's just two ingredients with work together to make something delicious. And then I love, I can say that, grilled sea bass with lemon, because if you squeeze a lemon over it, you don't need a rich sauce with it. You don't need very much. The lemon and the juice forms its own sauce. I love a lemon sorbet.
Granita as well.
Granita, yeah. And I love whiskey sour, which has lemon. So we have... Yeah, as you say, it's like choosing your best friend or your best film or your best recipe. But I'm very proud. And these are, my name is on the cover because there were 3 people, in a way, that did it. It is a River Cafe cookbook. The recipes all come from the River Cafe kitchen.
And, of course, the book is out. It's a fantastic idea. How are things going at the River Cafe? I've been recently to the River Cafe and I had an amazing experience.
Oh, did you? I'm so happy because
it was a sunny day. We sat outside.
But even in the winter, and what we're trying to tell people now is, it's called River. Somebody said to me, Ruthie, what should we call the new River Cafe? What should we name it? And I said, well, what about River Cafe?
Yeah,
but
makes sense.
It is. But then it is also much more than a cafe. And what's really exciting me now is to see people eating there at night, because we have candlelight, we have risottos, we have chicken with lemon. And we find that now it's a really nice place to go in the evening. And it's so good to make a place that people can go with reservations, without reservations. And also it's at a price point, which is so, I don't know, did you find it really reasonable and nice? So I think that, if you want to have a piece of nemesis or a lemon tart or ice cream, you don't have to sit through a rather menu which offers much more, but is at a different price point. I think it's now about £37 a head, £35 a head for a River Cafe food.
Which is fantastic for London, especially, my God. Yeah. And Ruth, it's so great to have you here doing our podcast, because you are amazing at podcasts.
Oh, you have to come on mine.
Yes.
I have a podcast called Ruthie's Table 4, and it started during COVID when people were separated from each other. And we're going into our 5th season now. And it is just really, you realize how deeply food relates to memory. And so if Desert Island Discs is about music and memory, this one is about food and memory. If I say to you, did your mother cook? Did your father cook? And I think the people who've been on it, we've been so lucky. But I think if I would say to David Beckham, let's talk about football, or Paul McCartney, let's talk about the Beatles, they'd say, been there and done that. But if you say, let's just talk about growing up with food and what happened when you discovered that you could eat better food than you could because of your success, what does that mean to you?
It's incredible how people open up as well when you talk about food. Perhaps if you ask other types of questions, they wouldn't. But the memories, I think that's so important in a way.
Yeah, memory is important. And I think, somebody might say, oh, I remember my parents were divorced. I was so unhappy, and suddenly my father started cooking to express his love, even though he wasn't there. It's meaningful.
And Ruthie, I host a podcast about print, about magazines, beautiful books as well. This is a beautiful piece of print. And I wonder, what's your relationship with print these days? I mean, are you a book reader? Do you still go to the newsstand and buy magazines?
I do both. I read, every day I read the New York Times, but I always buy Monocle.
Thank you very much.
Because I love turning the page. I've known Tyler for so long. And
he loves going to the River Cafe.
And I think that, the way you're looking at that book right now, you sort of stop, you turn a page. But I do like reading the newspapers. I'm completely converted to online. But then I like reading them. And when I get on an airplane, I buy magazines. I still do that. And then I do both. I listen to books. It's a different world now, but it's exciting, I think.
Very much so. I mean, I was going to be a bit cliche and end the podcast with the same question you do in yours. What's your comfort food, right?
Oh, my comfort food.
But I mean, you kind of mentioned some, but maybe you can mention something.
We ask everybody, we ask everyone what is their comfort food. It is, I suppose, it would probably be tomato pasta. I just love a tomato pasta. So it's... But then it might be, sometimes when I'm coming back from the River Cafe at 10:30 or 11 at night, I stop near my house and have an ice cream. I get one for the taxi driver and one for me. The other day I offered to give the taxi driver an ice cream when I went in. He said, you did that the last time I took you home. And it was really sweet.
I think that's the perfect comfort food. Maybe a lemon sorbet, perhaps?
Yeah, lemon sorbet, yeah. But I do really want to give credit to both Johnny Ive, Heather Ive, and Ed Ruscha, who really, in California, in LA and San Francisco and London, created a beautiful book.
Thank you, Ruthie. It's been a pleasure. The book Squeeze Me, Lemon Recipes in Art is out now, published by Rizzoli. And of course, you can try the real thing on the River Cafe and its adjacent, the River Cafe Cafe. And now we head to Tokyo. A pleasure to welcome back to the show cultural historian and author of 2 books, Status and Culture, How Our Desire for Social Rank Creates Taste, Identity, Art, Fashion, and Constant Change, and also Amatora, How Japan Saved American Style. His name is W. David Marx. He also was responsible for the translation of the very first English special edition of Japanese iconic title Popeye, self-described as a magazine for city boys. The English edition is a guide to explore Japan's capital city, Tokyo. To discuss the increasing success of Japanese magazines abroad and his work at Popeye, here is W. David Marx with more.
So Popeye is published by Magazine House, which I believe is celebrating its 80th anniversary this year. So it's a very old company. And I, through chance, about 17 years ago, met Takahiro Kinoshita, who was the fashion editor at Brutus. And through that connection, I started writing for Brutus. And then he moved a couple of years later to be the editor-in-chief of Popeye. And he really wanted to bring back Popeye to its former glory of the kind of 70s and 80s as a magazine focused on the concept of city boys. And city boys is definitely a Japanese English phrase, but what it means is kind of urban youth who know everything that's going on in the world and kind of think of themselves as kindred spirits to people in London and Paris, even though they live in Tokyo. So it's not so much about the nation state as it is about being cosmopolitan young men in their 20s with a little bit of money who know the latest in consumer goods and also are keeping up with the latest in media. So Popeye really started with that group, and Kinoshita's renovation of the magazine that happened in the 2010s brought it back to that city boy guide kind of feeling. So he left the magazine, and now Yuji Machida is the editor-in-chief, and he's continuing that tradition on. And they started moving into internet media as well, so let's say Instagram and X and things like that. And I went to them a couple of years ago. I once in a while still write for Popeye, and we were doing some articles together. And for the first time, I was writing a lot of them in English and then translating them into Japanese myself. And they said, oh, let's put the English into the piece. So we did some of the first bilingual articles in the magazine. And then they had an Instagram feed, and I said, well, how many of your followers are non-Japanese readers? And they said, oh, maybe, more than half even. I was like, well, let's add some English comments or English captions to the photos, because it just, will expand and let people really enjoy this great content you're creating. So we started doing English captions on Instagram a couple of years ago. And for some reason, that just snowballed into, because it's the anniversary of Magazine House, they were thinking about doing big projects, and they thought, let's do an entire issue in English. And so they collected their Tokyo guide material from over the last 6 or 7 years. So they always have a Tokyo issue every year. So they took the best stories from that, brought it together, and we just started translating it. And so it came out about 2 weeks ago. It's called Hello Tokyo, and it's a guide for exploring Japan's capital city. It's 100% in English. I mean, there's still some Japanese, captions and titles once in a while, but it's all in English. And if you pick it up and you look from it from far away, it looks like Popeye in the sense that they took the original design and we just plugged the English right into it. So it's as if someone who can't read Japanese puts on this pair of special glasses and can suddenly read the Japanese as English. It's that kind of experience. And I led a translation team to, go through all the texts and edited the text myself. And at the end of the day, I mean, we were trying to be pretty loyal to what the original text was. So it's not necessarily written for a foreign reader who's never been to Tokyo. It kind of assumes that you have ambient knowledge of Tokyo the way that a Popeye reader would, but at least it's in English now.
Were there any challenges in the translation? And of course, I am a Popeye reader, and of course, I translated the articles, but I've used all sorts of apps. Sometimes it gets a bit complicated. So when I actually saw that there was an English version, I was like, "Oh my God, this is a dream for me." But so tell us about this process, because we don't see this very often, like a Japanese magazine having kind of a special English edition.
Yeah, I mean, I think that translating from one language to another is 50% of the challenge, right? And that part's the easy part, which is just getting the text from Japanese into English. I think what was difficult was trying to capture the Popeye tone. And there's a very specific tone of voice that Popeye has that is knowledgeable, but enthusiastic. There's not a lot of snark to it. And so often it will read in a kind of funny, optimistic, almost naive way for an American reader. I mean, because I'm from the US, I see it through that lens of, if it were New York Magazine writing about New York, I think it would have a lot more snark and it'd be a little bit more sarcastic. And so it lacks that. And it also, again, assumes a lot of cultural knowledge that you would have about Japan that people outside of Japan may not have. And so there was always a dilemma in my head, which is, do we make this the representation of the Popeye voice in English, as in really try to say this is what they're saying and this is the sentence order in which they did it in, and even that logic doesn't make as much sense outside of Japanese, we'll just present this to be as authentic and literal to the Japanese? Or should we be changing this from scratch and rewriting it to be more of what a native English experience would be like? And, just because the degree of text, I mean, if you have to pick it up to see it, but every page just has hundreds and hundreds of words on it. I mean, it's just this tiny, tiny text in which
that's the delights of a Japanese magazine. So much content.
So, I mean, number one, they wanted to make sure that you had that feeling, which is like you're getting the sense of reading a Japanese magazine page with so much density, information density. And so that was kept. That really wasn't changed. And it was hard to, I think it would have been a difficult process to rewrite it all. But I think at the end of the day, at least for this edition, it's good for people to know this is what is actually being said in the magazine. It wasn't rewritten to cater towards a overseas audience. You're getting the raw English translation of the text that's there.
And I love that because, when I saw it, I was like, oh, will it be different? Perhaps a little bit watered down, perhaps, looking more like a magazine from the US or the UK. But no, the experience is exactly the same as reading a Japanese magazine, but it's in English.
And let me give you a really, really concrete example of that, which is Japanese magazines go from right to left. The cover is on what you would consider in the United States the back cover. And that didn't change. So the magazine goes from right to left, even though it's in English. So you pick it up and you flip leftward. And so that also means that when you have a 3-column layout, let's say it's morning, lunch, evening, the morning is on the very right and the evening is on the very left, which would be opposite of how it would be laid out in the US. So some of those design details are exactly the same as they were in Japanese. And, maybe some of that was because you'd have to redesign the entire magazine to go from left to right. But then also just you want to give people that feeling of this is the experience of reading a Japanese magazine. Another clear example is every establishment. So if it was a museum or a restaurant, they called every single one, confirmed their existence, confirmed their hours, confirmed their telephone number, and those are all in there. And so it's not just here's some places, look them up by yourself on the internet. It still provides kind of almost like a phone book level of detail about, this restaurant is closed on Thursdays and every fourth Tuesday. So all of that is in there, and all that was checked before the magazine went to print.
That's very helpful. And listen, David, it's such a great timing as well to release that because Japan, of course, it's a country that, more and more people want to go to Japan. All those, people, I don't know, tourism is booming. We see the reports. Of course, there's negative stories about it, but there's some positive ones as well. So do you think also Magazine House saw a business opportunity for that as well? Because, let's be honest, there are many Tokyo guides, but here you are, Japanese writers, a very respected Japanese magazine giving you tips where to eat, where to shop in Tokyo. This is fantastic.
Yeah, so Popeye does a lot of different kind of content, right? They do travel content, but also a lot of fashion content and cars, movies, really broadly everything related to culture. And so I think it was a really smart decision to start with a Tokyo guide because it's the most practical knowledge for somebody who's interested in Japan. And I think it also has the most permanent value in the sense that if you do fashion content, sometimes that gets old very quickly. And so I think the magazine, first and foremost, does a great job of pointing you to the neighborhoods you should go to in Tokyo. Because Tokyo tourism, my advice is always forget going to this museum or this specific place. Just pick one neighborhood and then walk around that for a day. And then the next day, pick a different neighborhood and walk around that. And so it has neighborhood guides at the very beginning. And the neighborhoods it picks are not going to be in any other Tokyo guide that you get. And so if you get a older, more established book form, it's not going to have a magazine like Kuramae or Sakusabashi in there, which is like the emerging cool neighborhood in East Tokyo. And even a website or something of people who are really into Tokyo, maybe a little bit more on the high end and only tell you about this is a fancy sushi place or this is some kind of high-end French place. And so this has everything from very, very expensive, very, very deep culinary experiences to here's the curry place you have to go to, here's the ramen place you have to go to. So I think that breadth is really not represented in many English Tokyo guides, but also it is incredibly up-to-date. And it represents very well what a sophisticated Tokyo person is interested in about the city and where they would go themselves.
I was already writing down the tempura places because this is my absolute favorite when I go to. I love going to those specific tempura places, so there are 3 in there. I want to ask you, David, as well. Brutus did the same thing, right, as well. They have an English content. First of all, were you also involved with that one or not?
No, I was not involved with that, and actually I didn't know about it until it came out.
Okay, so but it clearly is a trend, right? So do you think, is this something that maybe we should be expecting newer editions as well in the future?
So Japanese magazines are world-class in terms of the quality of information, the density of information, the quality of the design. And they do such thorough explorations of whatever theme they're into. And so almost every Japanese magazine has a tokushu, which means like a special theme issue, and it will just go really deep for 40 or 50 pages on a certain topic. And so you'll get an issue that's like, this is only coffee shops in the city, and it'll just have, 200, 300 coffee shops. Or here's a guide to traveling in Southeast Asia, and it'll just be really good at that. And so the quality of that information, I think, is universal. It's almost a waste for it to only be in Japanese. And so I think what this showed is it was difficult to turn this into a fully English magazine, but it's possible, and there is a market for it. And so I really believe in that quality of Japanese magazines, and I would love to see more happening. And I think a lot of people would love to see it because, as you know, magazine culture is still very, very healthy in Japan compared to other places. And that health really translates into quality. And that quality is a waste to only be in one language. And so I'm really hoping that this opens a new trend. And even Magazine House alone has Casa Brutus and all these incredible titles that they could certainly translate once in a while into English.
Thank you very much, W. David Marx there. And the special edition in English of Popeye magazine is out now. If you're heading to Tokyo sometime soon, it's a must-have. And we started the show talking about food, and we'll end the show talking about food. This time to talk with another legendary name, Trevor Gulliver, co-founder of the celebrated St. John restaurants in London. Now they have a new space, St. John at the Bookshop, located at the London Review Bookshop in Bloomsbury. To tell me more about the collaboration, I went there to speak with Trevor and, of course, to taste some fresh madeleines straight out of the oven.
Well, we don't know what we are. Or we do, because the mothership is still St. John Smithfield. What is it, over 30 years now, but there's not a plan, and we do things we enjoy, which now encompasses whether it's the bakery or our vineyards or the wine side of things, and more things that, because I like to think we're relatively, we're known by what we do rather than what we say we do. So there's always a little bit of intrigue. There is a definite synergy when we never thought we'd do, apart from being rude about what people get in theatre and things, that we would do the Bridge Theatre. But when Nick Heitner said to me about 4 productions in at the Bridge, I said, no, the reviews were good, weren't they? And he said, yeah, but why do they have to keep mentioning those blooming madeleines of yours? I said, well, I told you it'd work. And so in the same way that there I said, we can do that and do that. And there's an honesty system in theatre. And how nice if when they come for the interval, there's a smell of madeleines. We were intrigued where that went, and we've enjoyed doing it. And I sometimes go to rehearsals, ask, and they go, because I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
And occasionally some of the chefs you see on certain TV programmes have worked in our kitchens, for example. And a bit like, and here because of the Bookshop, and I'm London born and bred, so from, say, Westminster Bridge, so this has been a fixture. I think I remember taking some of my exam papers into the Senate House when I was a schoolboy or something. And there's a very gentle, happy synergy between us and them in a way. And it's blended in completely. We're almost part of the facility in that sense, if you regard it.
It felt natural straight away, in a way,
yeah,
right?
I think so. It's not just a bookshop in a way, and I guess St. John is a bit more than we're not just a coffee shop, which we don't want to be. And now there isn't a plan, but if something we're happy with, or it's about what we do, and of course we have our bakery, etc. So for our people, it's a good place too. If that makes sense. Why create happy environments rather than almost by definition a commercial environment has different objectives? Whatever they might tell you about human resources or the director of people. I read about this person as director of one of these trade magazine things. I actually changed he, she. I changed jobs 6 times in the past 2 years. I thought, oh, well, good management. So.
And Trevor, tell us, there's something I love about Bloomsbury as well. It's been a while since I've came here, a few months, and it's special. It's very tranquil, but there's so much history. There's so much kind of culture as well. I think it's also a perfect fit for you guys as well to be here.
Yeah, it's please that word, gentle. That thing about London being a series of villages that gradually joined up, but also they've joined up through use and what happens. So obviously Bloomsbury, the museum, lots of professional bodies have their headquarters near here. Many of the different forms that the University of London takes, Queen Square with great hospitals. So you've got this area that sits quite happily, comfortably in its own skin, but in the greater metropolis that is London. And within seconds you can, I find it because I can walk down to Neal's Yard to pop in the bakery and say hello, in case they're feeling a bit lost or alone because I'm too
forgotten.
busy. Yes, forgotten. That's the word. Which they're not, of course.
Of course not. And tell us about the menu. I had a look, I was very happy to see the classic donuts there. Yeah. And I'll tell you something, Trevor, I'm not even a fan of donuts, but the St. Joe donuts, they're a different story. Well, they're incredible.
Well, donuts are like things that give you pleasure, might not make you live long, but that's because you've had too many of them. Or you took too many of them, or you drunk too many of them, or you climbed one mountain too many. But a lot of things in terms of what we eat, ignoring the backdrop of health or health and safety, that we like eating are fine, but just don't eat. So, and they should give pleasure. So at Bermondsey, where the bakery is, and we just opened Friday through Sunday. But I remember once, it was a father with his very young daughter, and I had no idea whether it was his turn for whatever it was. And it was about 3 in the afternoon. I'd been there doing something. I was just chatting. And he walked up, holding his daughter holding his hand, and ordered a donut. We'd sold out. Her face started to crinkle. Oh. Her eyes started to squeeze. And then she just cried. And I just said, this will never happen again. And it's a true story, and I've never forgotten. Ruined my weekend. Oh. I'd caused pain. So there's nothing wrong with, but you have to do things well. I mean, the way we make a donut's different. It's not a commercial process. And whilst we don't use our hands, but famously, all our bakers have the art of doing a two-handed rolling of the dough. That means both left and right-handed, so we would do it twice as quickly. Obviously, in an industrial bakery, they come shooting out the gun into a bag, and there you are. Same with madeleines. Never eat a madeleine if you haven't seen the oven it was cooked in. Well, there's a lesson in the madeleine. It means that we are teaching skills. We are not about, for many businesses, exit route, or the people that have a successful restaurant that is a chain is not a restaurant. It's food retail, and we are hopefully about craft, knowledge, the joy of coming back, and also create an environment where people of St. John will learn things. And that can be encapsulated in why we do the madeleine, which the two Nicks suddenly realised that sort of second day but that's quite important. We were seeking a permanence. In the early days, Ferg and I would use this word permanence, and I spent a lot of time in Paris, and he'd be there with his father, being treated to the best restaurants. And it was apparent that it was disappearing. You'd be in Lip, and if I was in Lip, I would sit downstairs at the front. It was, you could see it falling away. And one of the worst meals I've had in living memory was at Cupola. We took our winemaker, Benjamin, for the first time he'd ever been, from the Languedoc, and Fergus and I walked out. We just paid a bill, said thank you very much.
Any tool.
And it was, so it's just that kind of thing where we're kind of the antidote. But that's just the way we think quietly about how we go about our business. The real pleasure, of course, is that we don't take ourselves that seriously, because it's nice we get a chance to do these things.
Fun things.
We have had cues, but then again, well, you can't do things quietly. So people always find out. But that's a nice thing, and it will settle down. And it's a nice morning to come and serve here,
And it's how nice. We're doing this interview in the basement here of the bookshop. Yeah. We're surrounded by books, literally. So tell us, you are a big reader then. You read books, papers, magazines. What's your kind of reading routine these days?
in books there's a pile. There's always some things you haven't done, and I get asked what's on my reading pile. I've read people's things. They go, that's a fib. No, that makes you feel good. My wife's a member of a book club, so yeah, and they're very serious. But I'm reading Covenant of Water now only because I'm reading it now. We were actually in Madras and in India generally recently, and it wasn't a good time. So, but I'm glad I've read the book afterwards. And then I do have books. I enjoy reading. This isn't a pump for them. I enjoy reading paper. So if I travel, my luxury is to go and get a copy of The Economist. They charge a fortune for it. It's a reference. You need to be well read. So I quite enjoy reading things like that, and it is a pleasure because it's current and current affairs. And then there's usually a couple of trade books. I said Danny Myers is a great New York wrestler, is an old friend of mine. He knows full well I've never read Art of the Table. I remind him. What he doesn't know that it's sitting on my pile of books to read. It's only taken me 30, whatever it is, I can't remember.
You'll be listening to this.
Yeah, so so you read things like that, but equally, because people have asked me about writing a book and everything else, and, you know, if, not so much here, but you walk into Waterstones or anywhere else now, the deal has been done with the publishing house, with the book distributor, with the so-and-so, and it's a bit like, I know, the last banana is eaten, and then that triggers something in the supercomputer in Wigan that picks up the idea, so the supermarket has put the order through, it's gone through to the north of South America, they've sprayed the bananas, it's on the thing, that's happened this, and all of a sudden, Jamie Oliver's already done the advert for Christmas and banana cake. And there is the idea in publishing that you know that's happening, and if you think of, I was just to get myself into trouble here, they say no, they're huge production values, but whether it's food, travel, competition, all these things are relatively cheap television. And, you know when the book's published, the cookbook is before the series comes out. So in a way, for me, it's and it's all about recipes, we've always shared our recipes with everybody when they come in. And some great chefs have worked with us for a while because when they've come to the UK, the restaurant isn't ready and things. We've done that for years. We love to share things.
Are you sharing the Madeleine recipe?
Yeah, we've done that. Please, it's everything. It's funny, but we've been given some very strange iterations of a roast bone marrow, I can assure you. No, please. It's simple, but it's difficult. So I'm not answering your question directly, but in terms of what would one write, I think it's just a bit like ourselves. It's not about the recipe. And if there is anything left, it's to explain that why we are the antidote, how it works. Some of my chums have run, big corporations and all this kind of stuff, and they are intrigued to go, I don't know how you made it work, Trevor. I really do not understand every which way round, and knowing how restaurants are, hotel and catering and all that stuff. I don't get it. What they don't understand is from the beginning, from when I came into restaurants, there was an idea about how something could be done. And the biggest thing is patience. So, in simple terms, but equally, it's not about hope, but we are certainly, I like the idea that we will speak to chefs and restaurateurs and stuff in the same way that whether they're sportsmen or, what is Bear Grylls? No idea. But whatever he is, and say you'd use the word celebrity, it's much better to have purpose and not an agent. So maybe the next thing we might do in literary terms, as opposed to how we speak, we have a voice, and I'm
I was going to
very
ask you
diligent
that.
about everything still goes through me, and I read it all. And now as we're post-COVID and we're back up to full strength and doing new things, and there's a new set of management, which, if you will, and plus all just people that come, it's to work at St John, and in a way it's more time for me to look at that. But it's what you don't say is the most important thing.
Would you ever do a magazine?
I've enjoyed writing occasionally for magazines, but it seems to me that and now it's easier now, but it's very difficult because the first thing you do is you work. And if you work for the people that work for you, if you will, without being sounded grand, is you haven't got time to do that. And your focus should be there. And quite often, because they've been a bit radical or a bit on edge or they haven't worked. I think Tyler Brule's, I think we go back a bit. So you see the Monocle was way through that gate.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't quite enjoy doing that, particularly if they've got a voice. I mean, I think there's too much media generally in the things that sell books. Food, sport, you want to go run through them all, etc., etc. They're mirrored by all those television programs in those categories, you know.
No, and my final question to you, I just say, of course, I just been to the St. John here at the Bookshop. What about a glass of wine reading a book? Are you in favor of that? I am.
I had to say that.
You can be honest.
Yeah, I said no. I was when my probably sentence number 3, and people read books pretty quite grown up, aren't they? And I didn't realise there was a courtyard. I'd forgotten about the courtyard outside. And that would seem eminently sensible to treat eminently sensible people that understand their emotions, the sense of taste. They can have a glass of wine. And I went, well, that'd be good. I went, yes. And you keep it simple. We make quite good wine.
Yeah, I was going to ask. You have a selection here of your very famous wine.
Yeah, do 3 reds and 3 whites. And once a month we'll put another wine on and we change it once a month. And it's kind of fun. You know, people go to bookshops. Quite a lot of them are recidivist bookshop goers. So, you know, if they want to wear that bag out so they can buy another one. I just think it's quite a natural thing to do. And you see people, you know, I'm going to get myself into trouble. If you go into, say, the National Theatre, where people go there because there's free Wi-Fi, it's one of those public spaces where people go in because there's free Wi-Fi. There's an idea that there's a reason you've come into a bookshop rather than so we don't have Wi-Fi available. So
get a book, get a wine,
it's fine. If your phone doesn't work with your Wi-Fi, sorry, we've moved on. Yeah, 100%. And equally, it should be part of that, whether it's the donuts or the sandwiches, all those things, a lot of people happily recognise them. And if people are coming in and taking coffees or madeleines away, because when we've settled down, we'll do them. So it might be small, but it's happily sustainable. And that's the most important thing.
Thank you, Trevor. A real pleasure talking with you. St. John at the Bookshop is open now at the London Review Bookshop. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks to our editor, Jack Dewars. If you have any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fp@monocle.com. We'll be back next Saturday as usual. And meanwhile, you can always listen to us again at monocle.com, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. You've been listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.